Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. Today we are back with another Dragon Ball figure video, and I am actually very excited for today's video. I wasn't originally going to take a look at the figure in front of us here, but I decided after some hemming and hawing, a little bit of situational type stuff and wanting to help a homie out, we were going to take a look at the Dragon Ball GT Super Saiyan 4 Choujin Giga. Gogeta. That's what it says somewhere on here. That is the name of this line. Now, while I show you the box, I'll give you a little bit of context to this. For one, I wasn't going to originally take a look at this figure because it had a couple of QC issues and the other figures in the line didn't really impress me. So I was like, especially with QC issues in Bandai, your boy ain't really a fan of all that. But I did want to get it because there is some really cool things about this figure that you will see once we actually get it open. And not just that, I also wanted to get it for two reasons. One of my buddies who lives in a country where it's difficult to get Dragon Ball figures without some ridiculous shipping was looking on Amazon and debating on what figure to get, and this was one of his cheaper options with the shipping. And knowing all the QC issues, I wanted to make sure that the figure was good for my boy. So shout out to the homie Annie for that one. I hope this review does you good in terms of your choice. And besides that as well, I actually wanted to use this video as a little opportunity to tell you some other places that you can actually pick up figures. Because I know I give you a lot of online stores, I recommend Amazon a lot, but I actually got this guy at my local Target. Target has been selling some Dragon Ball figures for a little while now, but they just so happen to get this guy in. So I decided, hey, why not use this opportunity to tell you about some other places where you can get figures. Now let's go ahead and pop the ring light on here. We already have our boy looking, ooh, alright. Well, we'll have to see how this actually ends up. I know you're probably taking a peek at those legs and being like, those look kind of cool. I'm not gonna lie, bro. And I would be lying if I told you that they weren't pretty cool looking. Because part of the gimmick of this line is actually that there is some very interesting shading. I will actually show it to you when I get to the box. Okay, so this is the tail, or rather when we get it out of the box, and I'll show you the box for the comparison. This tail looks really good, but I will say it feels kind of weird. Like, not just like the texture, because the texture is obviously really good. I think it looks nice for Super Saiyan 4. It's always nice when they give a little bit of extra sculpt work to this sort of thing, rather than making it look super stinky and just kind of like, I don't know. There's some lamer Super Saiyan 4 furs that I've seen for sure out there. But that is part of the gimmick with the Choujin Giga line, is the interesting shading on it. So let me go ahead and get the stand out. Obviously, this is going to have a back piece because of the way that he is supported. Interesting that it is not a clear plastic. It is just solid. I guess that makes sense, but I was kind of hoping that this figure would be one of those ones where it was a little bit of an exception and they had a clear base. There are some prize figures like that. They mostly do that with Ichiban Kuji figures. But this is part of what I was talking about. So this will obviously look a lot more interesting once it's actually on the figure. But you can see, wow, that is some really cool shading on the pants. And you would be right. It almost kind of reminds me of like the Fighters intro or the Legends intro. I can't remember if it's both or one of them. But regardless, it definitely is a really cool sort of gimmick, I guess, to make a figure that is in a, sort of basic pose, I suppose, a little bit more interesting. You can see that on the actual packaging, right? Now you can see the ring lights on. They actually do have this as the, I guess, product image, right? That it is sort of this, supposed to be like this black heavy paint splatter line art. I think there's a specific style for this. I can't think of what it's called off the top of my head, but yes, that is supposed to be the point of the Choujin Giga line, that it has this nice black shading. Interesting, though, that every time I've seen these figures, because the only other two figures in the line are the Super Saiyan 4 Goku and Vegeta, which I do have the Vegeta. I didn't get the Goku because I didn't really like how he ended up looking, but I will review the Vegeta at some point. But I figured, not just because of, you know, my buddy maybe getting this figure, but also because this figure also shares the same pose as the Int Gogeta from Dokkan, the TUR. Funny enough, we technically reviewed a figure with the SSR already. Now let's take a look at the face. So this was also something that I was kind of iffy on when I saw the original production images. I will say, thankfully, they finally gave us a figure without the stupid, like, black outline of the mouth. It almost looks like makeup, I guess. Funny enough, it's super thick on the eyes. I guess that's the exchange from it not being on the mouth. But this face is, like, a very weird one to me, because I feel like at, like, this angle, it looks really good, and it's almost, like, sculpted in a way that is kind of like supposed to be dynamic and viewed in this pose, so that it makes this facial expression feel more exaggerated and more natural when looking at it from this way. But it looks like a little bit derpy from other angles, if I'm being honest with you. And that was one thing that I was kind of worried about with the final product. The fur looks good, though. I love the color. Obviously, this is more akin to Gogeta's color of the fur. I love it when they do these little, like, notches in the sculpt. I think it ends up looking really, really good. I like the movement on the fabric, of course. The Metamorph Fusion jacket pieces look good. I love the little dashes and the little nicks in there. Obviously, that product line is kind of unfortunate that that's there, but hair is also good. It's pretty basic for Gogeta hair, if I'm being honest. It actually is showing up a little bit lighter on camera. If I can get a good picture, that's what it looks like closer to his actual hair color. But overall, it looks pretty good. Sorry, I definitely needed to take a drink of water there. Let's go ahead and put the stand together, though. Gotta smash that right in there. Obviously, he's going to stand there. We will put the figure together. It's also kind of weird. It almost looks like the head is a separate piece, but it is definitely not. Let's go ahead and slap this bad boy together. This does look like, once we actually get this on there, I don't want to break the hair, because obviously it's not really delicate, but it is a little bit like, not loose either. I don't really know how to describe it. Like, it's stable, but at the same time, I feel like you could still break it. And then look at me, man, handling it. Especially don't push down on these bits, because those are probably the parts that you could end up, like, actually breaking off. I will say this whole figure has a very weird, like, feel to it. Like, it's almost, like, sticky. I'm wondering if it's because of the kind of paint that they used. I'm not really sure. But that connection is pretty good. It's pretty hard to tell that that was two pieces before. And I really do like the whole look of this figure as one piece. I will say, though, as much as I do like the gimmick of the Choujin Giga line, that it's this, like, black pants, it's so weird to me that it's not, like, on the whole figure. Like, they just decided, oh, let's go ahead and make this only on the legs for the figure. That's just a little bit, like, odd to me, I guess. Like, that's the final decision that they decided to go with. I was, like, almost expecting the whole figure when I, like, kind of saw the original artwork for the box for this line. I think I put that in correctly. Feels like it's in there correctly. Yeah, I think that's good. Nice connection. I always love, too, when they sculpt it like the tail is ripping out of the pants. Always a nice little touch. Let's go ahead and chuck it on there. But yeah, I was kind of thinking that, like, when I saw the packaging for this line, I was like, oh, so the whole thing is going to have this, like, also, what? His whole foot is hollow? I don't think I've ever seen that before. Well, I guess that just goes on there, and then this just slides in there. Yeah, okay, well, that's pretty easy. I will say that's definitely a lot easier than some other Dragon Ball figures that I've had to deal with stuff like that before. But yeah, I just think it's interesting that they only do that type of shading on the lower half rather than the whole figure. But here is the final piece. I do quite like the look of this, actually. I do like the pose a lot. Obviously, again, it is basically the same pose as the Int Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, which is pretty cool. So, of course, if you're trying to collect Dokkan Battle figures, whether they're technically Dokkan Battle collab figures or Dokkan Battle figures that are, you know, figures that just share the same pose as Dokkan Battle, this guy is obviously a must-have for your collection. We'll probably also never get this pose pose again for a Gogeta figure. Overall, I do like it. I definitely don't think that it's my favorite, but it's a solid figure nonetheless, and I actually really enjoy this gimmick of the shading because I think it makes this figure stand out a little bit more. Like, I don't think I would like it as much without this gimmick here, but I think it's cool. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons now. Just kidding, we still have something else to look at with the figure. There were a ton of reports of some gapping when it came to the hair for a lot of copies of this Gogeta figure, which is obviously very unfortunate to see, and that was one of the major QC issues that kind of ended up making me not want to buy this figure originally. But I can thankfully say that at least on my copy, the gapping is only there by a hair. You can barely see it. Like, it's basically unnoticeable. That, funny enough, almost looks like a bigger gap, even though I'm pretty sure that's the problem. Or that's just normal, rather. You can kind of see the gap a little bit better right there. But when the figure is on full display, you literally cannot tell. Now, again, I can't say that this is like, oh yes, then no figures on the planet will have this issue and it's just exclusive to this group of people on Twitter. Obviously, I can't tell you that because I don't know that for a fact. And obviously, my individual copy was just one of the copies that ended up not having this issue. Which is great, obviously, because I was going to be very sad if it did have the issue. But I still wanted to mention it nonetheless, because obviously it is important when making your decision whether to buy this figure or not. So, I will say, if you do end up going to cop this figure, which I'll kind of give you my thoughts on whether you should hit the go button at the end of the video, just be wary that that is a possibility. Alright, now actually moving on to the size comparison section. We have the boy Gotenks here and the boy Goku next to Gogeta for some comparison. Funny enough, Gogeta is actually like almost as tall as Gotenks. Like a little bit shorter, I guess. Definitely closing in on his height, but I still think that, you know, the Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks figure tends to win a lot of these height battles, even though that's not really what they are, but tends to kind of win the game in terms of the height simply because of his big hair. Let's go ahead and measure the figure now. He stands at about... if I'm eyeballing that correctly, let's go ahead and get it a little bit more closer to my boy. It looks to be about 7 1/4 to like the tip, because technically the tallest part is right there. Maybe more like 7 1/2, around there. Definitely under 8 inches though. Obviously this guy though is going to be a little bit longer this way because of course the figure is, you know, meant to be kind of leaned over, so, you know, he's definitely probably a little bit longer than 8 inches, if not just 8 inches right off the bat. Because, of course, you're supposed to display him, like, leaning forward for the punch. I will say the other thing that I think is really tripping me up about this figure, because something about this looks off to me as I keep looking at it, I think it's just the big difference between the incredible shading on the bottom and the usage of the black lines in the pants, and how bare his face and the top half where his chest is feel. I think that's what's really kind of getting me about this figure right now, and what's sort of making me a little bit more mixed about it. Taking away our standards though, let's go ahead and compare this figure to some other figures in my collection. To start us off here, we'll hit us with a quickie. Gotta dust the boy off. Ah! I dusted him off so hard he broke. We have the Xeno Super Saiyan 4 Goku from Dragon Ball Heroes. I wanted to bring this guy out because, of course, A, both of these guys are Super Saiyan 4s, and B, they're in, like, kind of a similar position. Their idea is sort of the same, that they're both dashing forward. I like both of these figures. Again, this Goku figure still has a lot of problems with it. Funny enough, I don't remember if it made it into my original video, but his hand actually comes off. Thankfully, it goes right back on, but it's still kind of frustrating that that is an issue at all. But these guys do look pretty cool together. You could definitely get a setup if you ended up picking up the Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta from Dragon Ball Heroes. That is the figure that pairs with this Goku figure. But yeah, I think that they're pretty cool together. I definitely think... I don't know which one I like better out of those two, I feel like. They're both like too similar almost, but Xeno Goku's outfit always kind of gets me going. Alright, we have two boys now, actually. I had to bring these out. I know that these figures aren't the best, and funny enough, whenever I bring these guys out to play for these little comparisons, I always get people saying, ew, and I kind of can't blame you considering how these figures turned out. Because of course, here we have the LR Super Saiyan 4 Goku and Vegeta from the Dokkan Battle 4th year anniversary. Of course, I had to bring out some Dokkan Battle figures for the comparison. These guys do look pretty cool together, if I'm being honest. Obviously, it is great for any sort of Dokkan Battle display to have a Gogeta figure in the middle. I do think that you're maybe a little bit better off having the bigger Ichiban Kuji Gogeta in the middle if you are going to go up with this setup, or at least getting a little riser to have the Gogeta figure raised up a little bit. But he does look cool kind of bursting out of the middle of them. Funny enough, I think that both of these LR figures are actually a little bit more, well, big proportionally than Gogeta, at least vaguely looking at it here. Nonetheless, though, definitely not a bad option to display with this guy. It would have been cool to give him some kind of rock base, which, speaking of which, I figured I might as well chuck this into the fray, because this obviously comes with the Super Saiyan 4s. Just a little Dokkan Battle display to kind of give you a little bit of hint of, you know, oh, hey, you know, it's a Dokkan figure. Obviously, these come with the anniversary figures, so if you want to get one of these little things, that's where they are. Every single one of the anniversary figures come with them, so you don't have to worry about that. Now we're going to have to move our boy back a little bit because we're bringing in the man, the big Kahuna himself, my personal favorite Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta figure, the greatest Saiyan, Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, and I don't mean that in the way that he is the greatest Saiyan, I mean that in the way that that's the name of the Ichiban Kuji set. And these guys do actually look pretty cool together. I will admit, I do think that the Ichiban Kuji Gogeta is still my favorite. The shading, the expression, the pose, the size of the figure, everything about it just, oh man, really butters my biscuit. But these guys do look pretty cool together. Obviously, you could get some pretty interesting displays with these guys. Obviously, they technically are the same card in Dokkan Battle, of course, the Kuji one being the SSR and the prize figure one here being the TUR figure. So you could definitely get something going with that. It would be really cool to like print out the card arts and then have the figures stand in front of them. I think that would be a neat setup. I would love to do that someday if I was able to get the space. But these guys do look pretty neat together, I gotta say. I do like them both a lot. It is interesting to see the differences in terms of the color on the hair and on the shoulder pieces as well as the fur. Of course, the pants are a little bit more detailed on the Choujin Giga one because they use the black lines to kind of emphasize the detailing on the sculpt, but there is definitely a lot more shading, I feel like, on the top half of the Kuji one. The actual shoulder pads have some shading on them. His hair gets darker, a little bit closer to the roots. And funny enough, I believe the fur is a little bit lighter on the Kuji one. And obviously, to kind of define his muscles, they put a little bit of paint in the creases there to sort of give it that illusion of depth. The prize figure one also does that a little bit too. There's definitely some darker parts on the figure, but I think that it's definitely a lot more noticeable on the Ichiban Kuji one. But these guys look pretty cool together and definitely a decent display option if I do say so myself. Now, the final verdict for this guy, should you pick this figure up, I would say if you're a fan of the card in Dokkan, or if you like what you've seen from this figure so far, definitely he is a pretty good option for a Gogeta figure. Not only is it a little bit more interesting pose than if you're not a fan of, say, you know, the standard Gogeta just kind of standing there with his arms at his side pose. You know, again, if you're a fan of Dokkan, the pants are a really cool gimmick. And honestly, the face didn't turn out as bad as I thought it was going to, especially looking at it from this angle that I have it at right now. It looks literally perfect. I think it's unfortunately just when you move it a little bit, because of the way that the face is sculpted to sort of make it look good from this angle, it's a little bit off, but it's definitely not the worst face that I've ever seen. But I'd say this is definitely a good pick for you if you are willing to not only, you know, get a little bit of a smaller one compared to my boy, the Kuji one, Also, more importantly, taking the chances of the potential break in the hair. That is probably the only reason why I can't 100% recommend this figure. But another plus side of this guy is that he is a lot less rare than that Choujin figure, and he also goes for a decent price. Like I said, I got mine at Target. The retail price was $24.99 with my Target red card. I even got a little bit of a discount, and on Big Boy Amazon, he is also $25. So if you want to go pick this figure up, of course, link in the description to do so. If you do get it from Amazon, I get a little bit of an extra cut with no extra cost to you. And $25, I would say, for this figure is a pretty good price. I always recommend for prize figures, $20 to $25 is a pretty good price tag. If you would like to help me out in my figure collecting madness, as well as support the channel, you can definitely go do so on Patreon. I recently revamped it with some better and I think more fun rewards. So definitely go check that out if you're interested. But other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you plan on picking up this figure in the comment section below, and your thoughts on this figure. Of course, I always like to hear what you guys have to say. And if you enjoyed, I would appreciate it if you would smack that like and subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one. Dokkan Assets out. Peace.